Welcome back, guys, to Military Paranormal Time. 66% of you still haven't subscribed. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Thank you. I need to tell you what I saw in that river before they bury the truth with me. My name is Private First Class Jimmy Hartwell, and in June of 1954, I watched something pull a 1,000-pound mule underwater without making a sound. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what it did after. The way it breathed, the way it watched us, the way it seemed to understand exactly what we were. 3 days ago, I was just a radio operator from Baltimore, counting down my last 4 months in Honduras so I could get back to Dorothy and little Susan. Now I'm sitting in a debriefing room with 2 men in civilian clothes who keep telling me I didn't see what I know I saw. They're wrong. And if you've ever felt something watching you from dark water, if you've ever heard breathing that didn't come from anything human, then you need to hear what happened to our patrol. It started at Mocaron Base on the 15th of June. Sergeant Frank Morrison called us into the briefing room at 1700 hours. Me, Corporal Eddie Sullivan, and 3 others. Privates Bobby Martinez, Tom Garcia, and Specialist Carl Winters. Carl made my skin crawl from day one. He had these pale blue eyes that never seemed to blink right, and a habit of appearing behind you without making a sound. The other guys joked he was half ghost. I thought he was just strange. Frank spread a map across the table. His hands were shaking slightly, which was wrong because Frank Morrison's hands never shook. He'd walked through artillery fire in France during the war without flinching. 40-kilometer patrol to JUT forward operating post, Frank said, his voice tight. We leave at 18:30, follow the Rio Coco north. 4 days, maybe 3 if we push hard. What are we looking for? Eddie asked. Eddie was the oldest among us, 36, with a face like worn leather and eyes that had seen Korea's worst. He had a way of asking questions that got honest answers. Frank's jaw worked for a moment. Command says verify the supply route. Make sure it's clear. And what does command actually mean? Eddie pressed. Frank looked at each of us in turn. When his eyes met mine, I saw something I'd never seen in him before. Fear, real and deep. 2 patrols went silent in the last month. Different routes, but both near the river. No bodies recovered, no gear found, just gone. The room went quiet. Outside, howler monkeys screamed in the distance. Drug runners? Martinez asked. He was 19, young even by Army standards, still believed the brass told us everything. No evidence of cartel activity, Frank said. No evidence of anything, that's why we're going. Carl Winters spoke up from the corner where he'd been standing silent as a shadow. What about the locals? What do they say? Frank's expression darkened. The locals won't go near that stretch of river. They have stories, old stories. What kind of stories? I asked, my hand unconsciously touching the pocket where I kept Dorothy's photograph. The kind we don't put in official reports. Frank rolled up the map. Gear check in 30 minutes. Hartwell, test that radio 3 times. I want constant communication with base. Sullivan, you're walking point with me. Winters, you handle the mules and the dog. Martinez and Garcia, you're in the middle with Hartwell. Standard formation, weapons hot at all times. As we filed out, Eddie grabbed my arm. You got a bad feeling about this? I thought about Dorothy's last letter, the one where she wrote that Susan woke up crying because she couldn't remember my voice. I thought about how I'd promised to be home by October. Promised we'd never spend another Christmas apart. Yeah, I said. I got a bad feeling. Eddie nodded slowly. Me too. And in my experience, bad feelings about patrols are usually right. 4 hours later, we crossed the wire into the jungle. The trees swallowed us whole, and the last thing I saw was the base perimeter lights fading behind us like dying stars. I didn't know it then, but only 4 of us would make it back. The jungle closed around us like a fist. One moment we were walking through the cleared perimeter of Macaron Base. The next we were swallowed by a wall of green so thick the sky disappeared. That's how fast it happens in Honduras. Civilization ends, and something older takes over. I walked fourth in line, the PRC-10 radio strapped to my back like a 20-pound anchor. The weight cut into my shoulders, but I didn't complain. Radio operators don't complain. We just carry our burden and pray the equipment works when it matters. Ahead of me, Tom Garcia and Bobby Martinez moved with rifles up, their young faces already sheened with sweat. The humidity hit like walking into a wet blanket. Within 10 minutes, my uniform was soaked through. Further up, Eddie Sullivan walked beside Sergeant Morrison at point, his experienced eyes scanning the tree line with methodical precision. Eddie moved different than the rest of us, quieter, more deliberate, like a man who'd learned that staying alive meant paying attention to things others missed. Behind me, Carl Winters led the two mules and Rico, our German Shepherd, early warning system. The mule's hooves made sucking sounds in the soft earth left by the rainy season. Rico's ears kept swiveling, catching sounds I couldn't hear, and his hackles rose twice in the first 20 minutes. Hartwell. Carl's soft voice came from behind me, too close. The dog's acting strange. I glanced back. Rico was pulling against his lead, trying to stop, his eyes fixed on the dense foliage to our left. Carl's pale face looked ghostly in the failing light. "Probably smells a snake," I said, but I didn't believe it. Rico was trained to ignore snakes. "Maybe," Carl said, but his eyes stayed on the jungle. Or maybe he smells something else. Before I could ask what he meant, Eddie's fist went up. We stopped. The silence of the jungle pressed in. No birds, no insects. Just the distant sound of water moving and our own breathing. Frank made a hand signal. Garcia and Martinez moved forward to scout. I watched them disappear into the green shadows, marked only by the faint luminescence of their infrared chem lights. That's when I heard it for the first time. A sound from somewhere ahead, low and deep, like someone exhaling after holding their breath for too long. But it was wrong. Too much bass, too much volume, rolling through the jungle like distant thunder. "What the hell was that?" Martinez's voice crackled over the radio, tight with tension. Frank keyed his handset. "Report. What do you see?" Static hissed for 3 seconds. Then Garcia's voice, uncertain. "Nothing, Sarge. But we heard it too. Came from the river direction." I checked my watch. 1900 hours. We'd been walking 30 minutes and were maybe 2 kilometers from base. The Rio Coco ran another 100 meters ahead, invisible through the trees but audible as a constant low murmur. Eddie moved back to where Frank stood, studying the darkness ahead. They spoke in low voices and I saw Frank shake his head twice, adamant about something. Eddie's expression was grim when he returned to formation. "We keep moving," Frank ordered. "Stay alert. Eyes on the river when we hit the bank." We pushed forward. The sound didn't come again, but its absence felt worse than its presence. Like whatever made it was now watching instead of announcing itself. The trees began to thin. I saw water through the gaps, black and smooth, reflecting the quarter moon like polished obsidian. The Rio Coco. We'd reached the exposed section where the trail ran along the north bank for 3 kilometers. No cover, no concealment. Just open mudflats and dark water. Rico started growling, a deep rumble I felt through my boots. Carl struggled to hold him. "Sarge," Carl called quietly. "The dog won't go further." Frank turned, his face hard. "Make him go. I'm trying, but..." The breathing sound came again. Closer this time. Maybe 50 meters upriver. Long, slow, deliberate.
like something massive was sleeping just beneath the surface. Or waiting. "Sweet Jesus," Martinez whispered. Eddie's hand went to his rifle. "Frank, we need to reconsider this route." "We have orders," Frank said. But I heard the tremor underneath. "We follow the river north. That's the mission." I thought about Dorothy and Susan. Thought about promises I'd made about coming home. And I keyed my radio. "Macaron, this is Jaguar 6. Radio check, how copy?" The static that came back had something underneath it. Something that sounded like breathing.
The static in my headset pulsed with a rhythm that made my skin crawl. Long inhale, longer exhale, like someone breathing directly into the microphone. But there was no one on the other end. Just that sound, steady and patient. "Mokaran, how copy?" I repeated, adjusting the frequency dial. My hands were shaking. More static, more breathing. "Radio's acting up," I reported to Frank, pulling the headset away from my ear. The breathing continued, faint but audible even without the headset pressed against my head. Frank's jaw tightened. "Can you fix it?" "I don't know what's wrong with it. Equipment's fine, signal strength is good, but someone's on our frequency," Eddie finished, his voice low. He'd moved closer, listening. Someone who's not talking, just breathing. Martinez crossed himself. Garcia stared at the radio on my back like it had become something dangerous. Carl Winters spoke from the shadows behind us, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not someone. It's something." "Shut it, Winters," Frank snapped. But I saw how his hands stayed on his rifle, how his eyes kept drifting toward the water. "We need to move," Eddie said. "Standing here makes us targets." Frank nodded. "Garcia, Martinez, you're up front. Scout to the first bend. Call when it's clear." The two younger soldiers moved out, their silhouettes fading into the moonlit expanse of mudflats ahead. I watched them go, rifle beams cutting through the darkness, and tried to ignore the breathing sound still hissing from my radio speaker. We stood in silence for maybe 2 minutes. The river flowed past, black and infinite. Something splashed in the distance, just once, deliberate, like something testing the depth. Rico whined, high and panicked. Carl had both hands on his lead now, struggling to keep him from bolting. "Hartwell," Frank said quietly. "Try base again." I keyed the handset. Mokaran, this is Jaguar 6 requesting." Garcia's voice cut through, urgent. "Sarge, you need to see this. Now." We moved forward at double time, covering the 100 meters to where Garcia and Martinez stood at the water's edge. Their flashlights pointed down at the mud. What I saw there made my stomach drop. Prints. Massive prints pressed into the soft riverbank, fresh enough that water was still seeping into the indentations. But these weren't from any animal I knew. 3 toes, splayed wide, with claw marks gouging deep trenches in the mud. Each print was the size of a manhole cover. "Mother of God," Martinez breathed. Eddie knelt beside the prints, his experienced eyes studying the details. He touched the edge of one carefully, then pulled his hand back like the mud had burned him. "Made within the last hour," he said. "Maybe less. The mud's still soft at the center. Could be a tapir," Garcia offered, his voice hopeful. "Big tapir, maybe?" "Tapirs have hooves," Eddie said flatly. "These have fingers, and whatever made them weighs more than a car." Frank circled the prints, counting. There were 7 of them in total, leading from the water's edge and then back in. Like something had emerged, stood on the bank, and then returned to the river. "What stands on 3 toes?" I asked, my voice cracking. No one answered. Carl Winters crouched at the far end of the print trail, his pale face illuminated by his flashlight. "There's something else. Look." We gathered around. In the mud between the prints, Drag marks. Long, deep gouges like something with a tail had pulled itself along. The marks were wider than my leg. "Radio it in," Frank ordered, his voice mechanical. "Report what we found." I keyed the handset with trembling fingers. "Mokaran, Jaguar 6. We have possible large animal activity at checkpoint 2. Requesting guidance. Over." The static came back immediately. And underneath it, that breathing sound, but different now. Faster, excited, like whatever was listening had heard something it liked. Then a voice, distant and garbled. "Jaguar 6. Continue mission. Maintain radio discipline." The transmission cut out. The breathing returned, closer now, like whatever was on the frequency was moving toward us. Rico started barking, frantic and terrified. He lunged against Carl's grip, trying to run back toward base. "Sarge," Eddie said quietly, "we need to make a decision. Right now." Frank stared at the prints for 5 long seconds. When he looked up, his face was the color of ash. "We keep moving. The FOB is 28 kilometers ahead. We can make it by dawn if we push hard." "And if whatever made these tracks follows us?" Martinez asked. Frank chambered around into his rifle. "Then we pray it's something we can kill." We moved along the exposed riverbank like condemned men walking to the gallows. The mud pulled at our boots with each step, and the weight of the radio seemed to double with every passing minute. To our left, the Rio Coco flowed in absolute silence. No current sounds, no fish jumping, nothing. Just black water reflecting the moon like a sheet of obsidian glass. I kept one hand on my rifle, the other on the radio handset. The breathing from the speaker had stopped 5 minutes ago, replaced by static so pure it felt unnatural, like the silence before a scream. "How much further to cover?" Garcia whispered from ahead of me. 2 more kilometers, Eddie answered. "Then the jungle closes in again. We'll have trees, concealment." "Can't come fast enough," Martinez muttered. Behind me, Carl struggled with Rico and the mules. The dog had gone from terrified to catatonic, moving forward only because Carl physically dragged him. The mules followed reluctantly, their eyes rolling white in the darkness. That's when the smell hit us. Rich, organic, ancient, like the reptile house at the Baltimore Zoo, but magnified 100 times. It hung in the humid air, thick enough to taste, cold and clean and wrong. "You smell that?" Garcia stopped walking. We all smelled it. Eddie's hand went up, signaling halt. We froze in formation, rifles coming up instinctively. The breathing sound came back. Not from the radio this time, from the river. 50 meters ahead, maybe less. That same long exhalation, deep enough to feel in your chest. The sound of something massive pushing air through passages never meant for breathing above water. "Contact front," Eddie whispered into his handset. Frank moved up beside him. They exchanged looks, a silent conversation between men who'd seen combat. Frank nodded once. "Defensive positions," Frank ordered quietly. "Spread out, 5-meter intervals, eyes on the water." We deployed along the bank. I dropped to one knee, radio still on my back, rifle aimed at the darkness ahead. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The water began to move. Not waves, movement from beneath. The surface rippled outward in concentric circles, spreading from a point maybe 40 meters upriver. Something was rising, displacing water as it came. "Hold fire," Frank commanded. "Nobody shoots unless I give the order." The ripples grew larger, the displacement greater. Whatever was coming up was enormous. Martinez's rifle started shaking. "Sarge, I don't..." The water exploded, not gradually, not with warning. It erupted in a column of white spray and foam that shot 10 feet into the air. The sound was like a depth charge detonating, and the wave that followed crashed onto the bank with enough force to knock Garcia off his feet. And then it rose. The head came first, massive, elongated, prehistoric. The snout alone was longer than a man is tall, studded with teeth that caught moonlight like ivory daggers, eyes set forward, not on the sides like a crocodile. Forward, predator's eyes, intelligent eyes. They glowed faint amber in the darkness. The body followed, thick, muscled, covered in scales that overlapped like armor plating. It rose 8 feet out of the water, maybe 10, water shedding off in sheets. I saw ridges along its spine, saw the massive shoulders where limbs connected, saw power that could tear through steel. For 3 eternal seconds it hung there, looking at us, studying us with those forward-facing eyes that reflected our flashlight beams like mirrors. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. We just stood there, rifles half raised, minds refusing to process what our eyes reported. The creature's head tilted slightly, like it was curious, like it was deciding something. Then it slammed back down. The impact sent another wave crashing over the bank, and muddy water swept over my boots. The sound echoed through the jungle like artillery fire. And then it was gone, vanished beneath the black surface as if it had never existed. For 5 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Rico broke. The dog screamed, not barked, screamed, and tore the lead from Carl's hands. He bolted back toward base, disappearing into the darkness behind us with the sound of his panicked flight fading into nothing. One of the mules reared up, braying in terror. Carl grabbed for the bridle but missed. The mule broke its tether and ran, following Rico back down the trail. Supplies clanged and crashed as it fled. Rations, ammunition, gear, all of it vanishing into the night. "Hold the other one," Frank shouted. Carl threw both arms around the second mule's neck, but the animal was beyond reason. It twisted, kicked, and then made a decision that sealed its fate. It ran toward the river. "No!" Eddie lunged for it, but too late. The mule hit the water at full gallop and kept going, wading out until the current caught it. We watched helplessly as it was swept downstream, its head above water, still braying in terror. Then something rose beneath it, just a shadow at first, dark shape moving under the surface. The mule's scream cut off mid-note. It went under. 1 second thrashing in the current, the next, gone. Completely gone. The supplies floated for a moment longer. Canvas bags, metal cans, all our food and ammunition floating in the current. Then they followed, one by one, pulled under as if attached to wires. The water barely rippled. We stood on the bank, staring at the empty river, trying to understand what we'd just witnessed. "Did you see?" Martinez started. "Yes," Frank cut him off. His voice was hollow. "We all saw it." Eddie turned to me. "Get base on the radio. Now, tell them we need immediate extraction." My hands shook as I keyed the handset. Mocaron, this is Jaguar 6. We have contact with unknown large animal, extremely large. Request immediate extraction. How copy?" The static returned, and underneath it, that breathing sound, slower now, satisfied, like whatever was listening was pleased with what it had just done. "Mocaron, do you copy?" My voice cracked. "We need extraction. We need it now." The breathing changed, became something almost like a chuckle, low, rumbling, impossibly deep. Then the radio went dead. Not static, dead. Complete silence. "It's gone," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The radio's completely dead." Frank stared at the silent river. When he spoke, his voice carried a tremor I'd never heard from him before. "The FOB is 26 kilometers. We double time it. We're there in 4 hours. That's our only option now. What if it follows? Garcia asked, his face pale as paper. Frank chambered around. Then we find out if we can kill it. But looking at the dark water where a 1,000-pound mule had vanished without a trace, I knew the real question wasn't whether we could kill it. It was whether it would let us live. We ran. Not the controlled tactical movement they taught us at Fort Benning. Pure flight, boots pounding mud, breath coming in ragged gasps, discipline abandoned to the primal need to put distance between ourselves and that thing in the water. I felt the radio slamming against my spine with each step. Useless weight now, but I couldn't bring myself to shed it. In my pocket, Dorothy's photograph pressed against my chest like a talisman. 4 more months, I'd promised her. 4 more months and I'd be home. That promise felt like a lie now. "Slow down," Eddie called from the front. "We maintain formation or we die scattered." Frank raised his fist. We stopped, chests heaving, and formed a defensive circle. 5 soldiers, no mules, no dog, down to the ammunition in our belts and the terror in our bones. "Sound off," Frank ordered between breaths. "Injuries?" "None," Eddie reported. "I'm good," Garcia said, though his hands shook on his rifle. "Same," Martinez added. Carl Winters stood at the edge of our circle, his pale face turned toward the river. "It's following us," he said quietly. "You can't know that," Martinez protested. "Listen." We went silent. At first I heard nothing but our own breathing and the eternal sound of jungle insects. Then I caught it. Water movement, off to our left, parallel to our path. Splashing, deliberate. Something large moving through the shallows that ran between the river and the tree line. "It's flanking us," Eddie said, his voice tight. Frank checked his watch. 24 kilometers to the fob. 4 hours if we push. We don't stop again unless we have to. "And if it attacks?" I asked. Frank met my eyes. "Then we find out what we're made of." We moved out again, faster now, driven by the knowledge that something massive was pacing us through the darkness. The sound of water displacement never fell behind, never quite caught up. Just there. Constant. A reminder that we were being hunted. My legs burned. My lungs ached. But I kept moving because stopping meant dying, and I had a wife and daughter who needed me to come home. After 20 minutes of hard movement, the trail began to climb. The ground rose beneath our feet, carrying us away from the river and into higher jungle where the trees closed in again. Here, the canopy blocked most of the moonlight, and we moved through darkness so complete I could barely see Eddie's back 3 meters ahead. But the sounds of pursuit continued. Now it was behind us, crashing through undergrowth that should have been too dense to move through. Branches snapping, foliage being shouldered aside by something that didn't care about obstacles. "It's on land," Garcia whispered, terror making his voice thin. "Keep moving," Frank ordered. Carl fell back beside me, his breathing strangely calm despite our pace. "Jimmy," he said quietly, "your radio still dead?" I checked. "Completely. Won't even power on now." "That's not natural," Carl said. "Radios don't just die. Not like that. Not when something's hunting you." "What are you saying?" Carl's pale eyes found mine in the darkness. "I'm saying, whatever that thing is, it's not just an animal. Animals don't shut down electronics. Animals don't breathe through radio frequencies." Before I could respond, Eddie's voice cut through the darkness. "Water ahead!" We emerged into a small clearing where a stream cut across the trail. Maybe 4 meters wide, running fast over rocks. The sound of it had masked the approach of something else. Something that now stood on the opposite bank. I saw it in fragments. Moonlight catching on wet scales, the gleam of forward-facing eyes, the massive shape too large to be real. It stood there, half in shadow, watching us with that terrible intelligence. "Don't," "Move," Frank whispered. We froze. 5 statues in the darkness, rifles useless in our hands because we all understood instinctively that shooting this thing would only make it angry. The creature tilted its head, studying us, deciding. Then it opened its mouth. The sound that came out wasn't a roar. It was something between a hiss and a groan, deep enough to vibrate in my chest, and underneath it, I swear to God, underneath it was something that sounded almost like words, like language processed through a throat never meant for speech. Martinez's rifle clattered to the ground. He'd fainted, simply collapsed where he stood. The creature's eyes fixed on the fallen soldier. Then, slowly, deliberately, it sank backward into the stream and disappeared. The water flowed on as if nothing had been there at all. "Pick him up," Frank ordered, his voice mechanical. "We're not stopping. We're not slowing down. We move until we hit the fob or we die trying." Eddie and Garcia grabbed Martinez under the arms. Carl retrieved the dropped rifle, and I looked back at that stream, at the water flowing innocent and clear, and wondered if we'd just been warned, or if we'd just been marked. Martinez came to after 2 kilometers, thrashing against Eddie and Garcia's grip, eyes wild with panic. "It spoke," he kept saying. "Did you hear it? It spoke to us." "It didn't speak," Frank said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It was just animal sounds. Your mind playing tricks." "My mind didn't drop me unconscious," Martinez shot back. "That thing made a sound no animal should make. And you know it." Frank didn't argue further. We all knew Martinez was right. We'd been walking for nearly 3 hours now. My watch read 2,200 hours. The fob was still 18 kilometers ahead. Another 3 hours if we maintained pace. But exhaustion was setting in. Garcia stumbled twice. Carl's breathing had gone shallow and rapid. Even Eddie, who'd marched through Korean winters, was starting to flag. The trail descended sharply, dropping back toward the river. Here, the terrain funneled us into a natural bottleneck. Sheer rock face rising 30 feet on our right, the Rio Coco flowing less than 10 feet away on our left. The path between them was barely wide enough for single file. Eddie stopped at the entrance, studying the narrows with his experienced eyes. "I don't like this." "None of us like it," Frank said. "But it's the only route forward. The rock face runs for half a kilometer. We can't climb it in the dark." "It's a kill zone," Eddie insisted. "If that thing comes at us in there, we've got nowhere to go. No room to maneuver, no cover. You want to wait here until daylight?" Frank's voice had an edge now. "Give that thing 6 more hours to hunt us?" Eddie was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Single file. Weapons ready. If anyone sees movement in the water, you call it immediately." We entered the narrows. I was third in line now, behind Frank and Eddie, with Garcia, Martinez, and Carl following. The rock face pressed close on my right, rough stone scraping my shoulder. On my left, the river ran in eerie silence. The breathing stopped. Complete silence fell over the jungle. No insects, no birds, no wind. Just our footsteps and the dead weight of the radio on my back. "This is wrong," Carl whispered from behind. "When the jungle goes quiet, it means something's about to happen." "Shut up, Winters," Frank hissed, but Carl was right. In my 8 months in Honduras, I'd learned that the jungle had a rhythm, a constant symphony of life. When that stopped, it meant a predator was near, and every other living thing knew to hide. We were 50 meters into the narrows when I saw the ripples. Perfect circles spreading outward from a point in the water directly beside us. Something had surfaced, slow, quiet, right there. "Contact left," I whispered, my voice strangled. Frank's hand went up. We stopped, frozen in place. The water didn't move again. No more ripples, but I felt something, a presence, massive and patient, just beneath that black surface. Then I saw the eyes, 2 amber lights glowing from maybe 6 feet away, just below the waterline. They rose slowly until they broke the surface, set in a head the size of a refrigerator, scales glistening wet in the moonlight. Those eyes looked directly at me, not past me, not through me, at me, with recognition, with intelligence that made my blood turn to ice. It knew what I was. It understood. And in that moment of eye contact, I felt something pass between us. An acknowledgement, a judgment, a decision being made about whether I was worth killing. Time stopped. My finger was on the trigger, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stand there while something impossible studied me from less than 10 feet away. I thought about Dorothy, about Susan's crayon drawing of Daddy that I'd never responded to, about promises I'd made that I'd never keep. The creature's eyes held mine for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then, without a sound, without a ripple, it sank. The eyes disappeared beneath black water, and it was gone. My legs gave out. I sagged against the rock face, gasping for air. "Move!" Eddie grabbed my arm. "Keep moving." I found my feet somehow, stumbled forward. We cleared the narrows and broke into open ground, and I collapsed in the mud, my entire body shaking. "What happened back there?" Frank demanded. "Why did you stop?" I looked up at him, at all of them. It was right there, right next to me. It looked at me, and, Frank pressed, and it decided not to kill me. My voice was barely a whisper. It let me live. Carl knelt beside me, his pale face inches from mine. "The question is why," he said softly. "Why would something that size, that powerful, let any of us live?" Nobody had an answer. But as we sat there in the darkness, catching our breath, I realized Carl had asked the right question. That thing could have killed us at any point, could have taken us one by one or all together, but it hadn't. It had followed us, watched us, tested us, like we were the ones being studied, like we were the experiment. And it wasn't finished with us yet. We ran for another hour before Frank finally called a halt. Not because we'd reached safety, we were still 12 kilometers from the fob, but because Martinez collapsed mid-stride, his legs simply giving out beneath him. "Can't," he gasped, face pressed into the mud. "Can't go further." "You have to," Frank said, but there was desperation in his voice now. The sergeant who never questioned orders was starting to crack. Eddie checked Martinez's pulse, pulled back his eyelids. "He's done. Pushed past exhaustion. We need to rest. Just 15 minutes. "We don't have 15 minutes, Frank snapped. "Then we carry him," Eddie shot back. "But if we don't rest, we'll all be collapsing. You know I'm right." Frank's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. 15 minutes. Defensive perimeter. Nobody sleeps. We formed a circle in a small clearing, backs together, rifles pointing outward. Garcia took first watch north. Eddie watched south. Carl covered east and I took west, my useless radio still strapped to my back like a cruel joke. Frank knelt beside Martinez, checking the young soldier's gear. That's when I noticed his hands were shaking violently. "Sarge," I said quietly, "you okay?" Frank didn't look up. "Fine." "You don't look fine." His hands stilled on Martinez's canteen. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were hollow. "You want to know the truth, Hartwell? Command didn't send us out here to verify a supply route." The admission hung in the air. Eddie turned from his watch position. Carl's pale eyes fixed on Frank. "What?" Garcia's voice cracked. Frank's shoulders sagged. 2 weeks ago, a research team from the Smithsonian was working this river. Herpetologists, studying reptile populations. 7 people. They radioed about something unusual they'd found. Massive tracks, strange sounds. Then they went silent. Command sent a recovery team, found their camp destroyed, found blood, never found bodies. Jesus Christ, Eddie breathed. And they sent us in anyway? They wanted confirmation, Frank continued, his voice dead. Wanted soldiers to document what took them. That's why I was ordered to bring Hartwell and his radio. They wanted reports. They wanted evidence. Well, we've got evidence now. You bastard, Garcia said, his rifle now pointed at Frank. You sent us out here as bait? I had orders. Orders to get us killed. Eddie moved between Garcia and Frank. Lower the rifle, son. He knew! Garcia's voice rose toward hysteria. He knew something was out here and he let us into it anyway. I didn't know what it was, Frank said, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. I thought it was cartel activity, maybe locals trying to scare researchers away from something. I didn't think it would be real. Carl Winters spoke from his position, his voice calm and strange in the darkness. I did. We all turned to him. What? Eddie asked. Carl stood slowly, his pale face catching moonlight. I knew something was out here. That's why they sent me. What are you talking about? Frank demanded. Carl reached into his shirt and pulled out a set of identification tags, but they weren't standard military issue. They were marked with letters I didn't recognize. DARPA. My name is Carl Winters, he said quietly. But I don't work for the Army. Not really. I work for the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. We study things the military doesn't want to admit exist. The silence that followed was broken only by Martinez's labored breathing. You're a spy, Garcia said flatly. I'm a researcher, Carl corrected. And I've been tracking reports of this species for 3 years. We call them Titanus flumineus, river titans. Ancient reptilian megafauna that survived in deep river systems. There are maybe 50 left worldwide, all in Central and South America. You knew, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You knew what was out here, and you let us walk into it? I didn't know it would be this active, Carl said. They usually avoid humans, but something's changed. The dam construction upriver has disrupted their hunting grounds. They're territorial now, aggressive. Eddie's rifle was up now, pointed at Carl. Give me one reason not to shoot you where you stand. Because I'm the only one who knows how to survive this, Carl said simply. I've studied their behavior. I know their patterns. And I know something you don't. What's that? Frank asked. Carl's pale eyes swept across us. That thing in the water? It's not hunting us for food. It's herding us, driving us toward something. And if we keep moving toward the fob, we're going exactly where it wants us to go. The jungle around us remained silent, waiting. Why? I asked. Why would it herd us? Carl looked toward the river, hidden in darkness beyond the trees. Because there are 2 of them, and we've been moving into the second one's territory for the last hour. You're lying, Garcia said, but his voice wavered. I wish I was, Carl replied. He pulled a folded map from his pocket, marked with red zones. River titans are territorial. Each one controls a stretch of river, usually 10 to 15 kilometers. We entered the first one's territory at checkpoint 2. That was the one that took the mules, the one that's been following us. He traced his finger along the map. But here, he pointed to a spot maybe 5 kilometers ahead, is where the territories overlap. A breeding pair, male and female. The male has been driving us north, away from his territory and into hers. Why? Eddie asked, his rifle still trained on Carl. Because the female is protecting something, probably a nesting site, and anything that enters her range. Carl's voice trailed off. Frank snatched the map from Carl's hands. How long have you known about this? I suspected when I saw the tracks at checkpoint 2. Too large for the male we've been tracking. But I wasn't certain until... Carl's eyes flicked to me. Until it let Hartwell live in the Narrows. My stomach turned. What do you mean? Males are territorial but cautious. They test threats, study them. That's what it was doing when it looked at you, measuring you, deciding if you were dangerous. Carl's pale face was expressionless. It decided you weren't. That's why it let you live. And the female? Eddie pressed. Females protecting nests don't measure threats. They eliminate them. Martinez groaned from where he lay. So we're dead. Is that what you're saying? Not if we change course, Carl said. He pointed to the map. There's another route, southeast, through the high jungle. It'll add 8 hours to our journey, and the terrain is brutal. But it keeps us away from the river, away from her territory. Frank studied the map, his jaw working. Command expects us at the FOB. We don't show up, they'll send search teams. Search teams will die too, Carl said flatly, unless someone warns them what they're walking into. Then we keep going to the FOB, Frank said. We push through, we warn them. We die. Eddie interrupted. Frank, listen to yourself. You're following orders that were based on lies. The mission is compromised. We need to survive so we can report what's really out here. Frank's face twisted with something between rage and despair. I've never failed a mission. Never. There's a first time for everything, Eddie said gently. And there's no shame in choosing your men over your orders. I watched Frank struggle with himself. The sergeant who'd built his career on following orders, on never questioning command, now faced with a choice that would define him. He looked at each of us in turn. Eddie, steady and waiting. Garcia, terrified but watching. Martinez, barely conscious. Carl, pale and patient. And me, thinking about Dorothy and Susan and promises I'd made. Hartwell, Frank said finally. What do you think? The question surprised me. I was the lowest ranked man here, just a radio operator. Why are you asking me? Because you looked that thing in the eyes. You felt what it was. So tell me, can we fight it? I thought about those amber eyes, that terrible intelligence, the casual power with which it had taken a 1,000-pound mule. I thought about how small my rifle had felt, how useless. No, I said quietly. We can't fight it. We can only run from it. And if there's two of them, I couldn't finish the sentence. Frank was silent for a long moment. Then he carefully folded the map and handed it back to Carl. Show us the alternate route. Sarge, Garcia started. That's an order, Frank said, but his voice was hollow. We're not going to the FOB. We're taking the high jungle route. We survive this, we report what happened, and we let command deal with the consequences. Eddie lowered his rifle. You're making the right choice, Frank. Am I? Frank's laugh was bitter. I'm abandoning my mission. I'm disobeying direct orders. My career is over. Your career doesn't matter if you're dead, Eddie said. Carl was already moving, pointing southeast into the dense jungle. We need to start climbing now. Get as much elevation as possible before dawn. The Titans don't leave the water during daylight, but if we're still in range when night falls again. He didn't need to finish. We understood. Martinez struggled to his feet with Garcia's help. We formed up again, but different now. Not a military patrol following orders, but 6 men trying desperately to survive something that shouldn't exist. As we left the trail and plunged into the unmarked jungle, I heard it one last time. That breathing sound, low and patient, somewhere in the darkness behind us. The male was still following, still watching, still herding us exactly where Carl said we couldn't go. Because 10 minutes into our new route, we found the tracks. Massive, fresh, leading directly across our path. The female had been waiting for us to run. The tracks were twice the size of the ones we'd seen before. Each print was deep enough to hold rainwater, wide enough that I could have laid down inside one. 3-toed, clawed, and so fresh that mud still crumbled at the edges. She knew, Carl whispered, his face pale as death. She knew we'd try to run. She's been paralleling us the whole time. Garcia started hyperventilating. We're trapped. There's nowhere to go. There's always somewhere to go, Eddie said. But I heard the lie in his voice. He was studying the tracks with the expression of a man doing math he didn't like the answer to. Frank's hands had stopped shaking. Something in him had gone cold and distant, the way metal gets before it shatters. How far to high ground? Carl checked his map. 2 kilometers. There's a ridge system that rises above the river valley. If we can reach it. If, Frank repeated. And how long before she catches us? Minutes, Carl admitted. Maybe less. These tracks are less than 10 minutes old. Martinez sat down hard, his face gray. Then we're dead. All of us. No, Eddie said suddenly. Not all of us. Something in his tone made my blood run cold. I'd heard that voice before, in stories from Korea. The voice of a man who'd already decided to die. Eddie, don't, I started. Listen to me, Eddie cut me off. His eyes swept across us, and I saw they were clear, calm, resolved. These things are territorial, right? They're hunting to protect their range, not for food. Yes, Carl said slowly. Then they'll focus on the biggest threat. Eddie unslung his rifle, checked the magazine. They'll focus on whoever makes the most noise, draws the most attention. You can't, Frank said, but there was no strength behind it. I'm 36 years old, resigned, Eddie said. No wife, no kids, no one waiting for me back home. But Hartwell's got Dorothy and little Susan. Martinez has got his mother in Texas. Garcia's engaged to that girl in Corpus Christi. He looked at Frank. And you've got a career to salvage. A report to file that might save the next patrol. I'm not ordering you to do this, Frank said, his voice cracking. You're not ordering. I'm volunteering. Eddie turned to Carl. How long do I need to give them? Carl's throat worked. 20 minutes. If you can buy them 20 minutes to reach the ridge, I can give you 20 minutes. Eddie started pulling grenades from his pack, checking pins. I'll lead her away from your route. Make enough noise that she has to follow. You run. You don't look back. You get to that ridge and you keep going until you reach the fob. Eddie, there's got to be another way, I said, my vision blurring. There isn't. Eddie gripped my shoulder. You tell Dorothy that her husband's coming home. You tell Susan her daddy loves her. And you tell them both that an old soldier gave you that chance. You tell them it meant something. He turned to Frank. You're in command. Get them out of here, Sarge. Frank's face crumbled. For a moment, the man who always followed orders was gone, replaced by someone who understood that some orders cost too much. Corporal Sullivan, it's okay, Frank, Eddie said gently. This is the first choice I've made in 20 years that feels right. Let me have it. From somewhere in the darkness, water moved. Heavy displacement. Something massive shifting position. She's coming, Carl breathed. Eddie checked his rifle one last time, then looked at each of us. 5 minutes head start. Then I make noise. You run like hell and you don't stop. He smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. It's been an honor, gentlemen. Eddie, Martinez started, tears streaming. Run. Eddie turned and walked toward the sound of moving water, toward the thing that had been hunting us, toward his death, chosen and deliberate. We ran. Garcia and Carl supporting Martinez between them, Frank leading with the map. Me bringing up the rear, the useless radio still on my back, tears blinding me. Behind us, Eddie's voice rang out through the jungle. Come on, you big bastard. I'm right here. A rifle shot, then another. Then the distinctive crack of a grenade. And then a sound that would haunt me forever. Eddie Sullivan screaming, not in fear but in defiance, drawing the monster away from us, giving us time measured in his own blood. The screaming lasted 45 seconds. Then it stopped. But we kept running, because Eddie had bought us that chance with everything he had, and we couldn't let it be for nothing. We reached the FOB at 4:30 a.m. 4 men instead of 6, covered in mud and blood and the weight of what we'd lost. The perimeter guards took one look at our faces and knew something had gone catastrophically wrong. Lieutenant Marks, the American advisor, met us at the gate. "Where's the rest of your patrol?" Frank's voice was mechanical. "Sullivan and Rico are KIA, mules, lost. Equipment, lost. We need immediate medical and debriefing." But I saw how Frank's hands started shaking again the moment we crossed inside the wire. How he couldn't stop looking back toward the jungle, toward the darkness that had taken Eddie. They separated us immediately. Standard protocol for traumatic incidents. Isolated interviews. Prevent collaboration on stories. They put me in a small concrete room with 2 men in civilian clothes. The older one introduced himself as Mr. Crane, Department of Defense Special Projects Division. "Tell me everything, Private Hartwell." So I did. Every detail, from the breathing sounds to the prints, to the thing that rose from the water, the eyes that studied me in the narrows. Eddie's sacrifice. All of it. Crane listened without expression, taking notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You understand how this sounds," he finally said. "I understand what I saw. And what you saw was a large aquatic predator, species unknown, possibly reptilian. Aggressive territorial behavior." Crane's voice was flat, rehearsed. "That will be the official determination." "That thing was intelligent," I said. "It shut down my radio. It herded us. It worked with another of its kind. That's not normal animal behavior. Nevertheless, that's what the report will say." Crane closed his notebook. "Corporal Sullivan died heroically engaging hostile wildlife to protect his unit. Private Rico was lost to the same animal. Your mules panicked and were swept away by the current. Those are the facts that will be recorded. And Carl Winters? The fact that DARPA sent a spy on our patrol?" Crane's expression didn't change. Specialist Winters was standard personnel, nothing more. I understood then. They were going to bury it. Bury Eddie's death. Bury the truth. Make it just another patrol that encountered wildlife and lost men to bad luck. "Corporal Sullivan deserves better than that," I said, my voice breaking. "Corporal Sullivan will receive a Bronze Star for valor," Crane replied. "His family will receive full benefits. His sacrifice will be honored. But the details..." He paused. "The details stay classified, for national security reasons." "Whose security?" "Because it's not ours. Men are going to keep dying. That area will be marked as a red zone. No future patrols within 5 kilometers of that river section. We're protecting soldiers, Private. Just not in the way you want." They released me 6 hours later. Frank was reassigned within a week. Transferred stateside, different unit. His career derailed by the failure of Patrol Jaguar 6. I heard he started drinking. Couldn't shake what happened. Last I heard, he was discharged on medical grounds in '56. Martinez and Garcia took early discharge, medical psychological. I saw them once before they left and we didn't talk about it. Couldn't. The words didn't exist for what we'd experienced. Carl Winters disappeared. No forwarding address, no transfer papers. Like he'd never existed at all. They sent me home 3 weeks later. Early release. Commendation for service. They wanted me gone. Wanted all of us scattered before we could coordinate our stories. I walked off the plane in Baltimore on July 4th, 1954. Dorothy was waiting with Susan in her arms. My daughter didn't recognize me at first, just stared with those big brown eyes. But when I held her, when I breathed in the smell of her hair, I broke down. Sobbed right there in the terminal. Because Eddie Sullivan would never hold his child, would never come home. Had traded his future so I could have mine. Dorothy asked what happened. I told her equipment failure. Lost men to a river accident. The official story. She knew I was lying. Wives always know. But she didn't push. Just held me through the nightmares that followed. 20 years have passed. Dorothy's gone now. Cancer took her in '68. Susan's grown, married, has a daughter of her own. I'm 53 years old, retired from a construction job in Pittsburgh, living alone with memories that won't fade. Frank Morrison died 2 years ago, heart attack. I went to the funeral. We didn't speak about Honduras, but before I left, his widow gave me a letter he'd written. If I don't survive this, it read, someone needs to know the truth. Hartwell, you were there. You saw. Don't let them bury Eddie's sacrifice under lies. Don't let them pretend it was just animals and bad luck. That thing in the water was real. It was intelligent, and it's still there. Carl Winters contacted me last month. First time in 20 years. Said he's still tracking them. River Titans, he called them. Said there have been 14 more incidents since '54. Different rivers, different countries, same pattern. All buried, all classified. He asked if I'd be willing to testify if the truth ever came out. I said yes, because Eddie Sullivan walked into darkness so we could reach the light. And the least I can do, the only thing I can do, is make sure people know what he died fighting. The world is stranger than they tell you. Deeper, darker. There are things in those rivers that have been there longer than human civilization. Things that watch us from beneath black water. Things that understand territory and tactics and how to hunt creatures that think they're the apex predator. I saw one, looked into its eyes, and it let me live. Not from mercy, but from calculation. Because I wasn't a threat. Just a scared kid with a radio who wanted to go home. Eddie Sullivan